In this video, I'm going over the parametric design and we are go over the steps to create object or the part and then define the some global variable and then relate those variable to our design and to our dimensions. To start the program, this time instead of the X design, I'm going over the part design. So if you run the app for the first time, it will install the software in your system in your computer, and the next time that you click on that, it will load the software from your computer. The difference between the X design and the part design is that the first is that X design run on the web system, so it's the online. So as you can see, there is a small flash at the top. So it doesn't need to have any kind of installation in your computer, but the part design need to be installed in your computer, and then you can run the system from your computer. And the next thing is that the X design have very few commands that you can use for your designing, but the part design, it has all the commands that you usually need for your design, and the part design is part of the CATIA software. Okay, so I click on the part design and I open the file. So this is the environment for the part design, and as you can see, it's run in my computer, in my laptop, and also you have the same access to your apps and all of the items that you need from the compass here too. So the difference between the X design and also and part design or CATIA version is that in the X design you save your part. So if I open the X design for you, you save and export of the file happen inside your software. So if I open let me open the new component. So here, if I create some part or some object, then I can save it or export the file from the essential part. So if I go to the command section, I select the essential, you can see that you have a save option. But in the part design or in the CATIA's version, you have access to those open or export from the top menu. So if you look at this flash, you can click on that, then you have options for the save or export your file, or you can start the text message with some other team member that they are online too. And the next thing is that you can open the new part or new object from the top of the screen. So I create a new physical product, and so let me open the so I start with the new 3D part because I want to create the object. So as you can see that I can open multiple object or multiple part, different name or different software or different app at the same time. So I can add another tab, and it's like the Google Chrome or Firefox, that you can add the new tab and work with the each tabs individually. So I can open the for example, a drawing in the second tab, and I can work in each one of them individually, and then I can either even connect them together. Okay, so let me delete this one. Okay, so here you see that for the saving, you don't have, for the standard, you don't have the option for the saving or exporting. So you need to go up and click the from the this flash and select the save or export your file. The next thing is that if you want to, for example, change some of the properties of your part design, for example, for the unit system, or some other options for the view, you need to click on your name in the top of the screen, and then you click on the preference. So the preference shows all of the options that you have. You can control everything that you have for your parts, and also for your for different views and different app that you have. So for example, here I can go to the 3D modeling core, expand that, and in the part design I expand this part, and I have some options that I can just display the symbolic, or untick the result that I see in the parametric part. And also you have, so this is the reference for all of the apps that you have in your Compass. And the next one, the main one, is only the all of the properties that you can change for the environment that you are right now. So I'm in the part design, so I have different options for my part design. So if I go to the modeling and I expand all, you can see I have different options here. So one of them is the unit system, and it shows what is the unit system here. And then if I want to change the unit system, I just click on here and change the millimeter to the meter or inches. So I keep it for the millimeter. The next thing is that tick on the display formula, and also parameter names for your tree, so you can see them in your tree. So I click OK. Okay. So now let's say that we want to create this objective with the global variable that we have here. In other words, that we want to create this brick, and then there is some special relation between the length, width, depth, and all of these holes and location of them with the some numbers that some parameters that we define here. So the whole purpose of the using the parametric design is to have the flexibility and options to change your part at once. So for example, if you want to design different screws and all of them have the same properties, only that they have different dimensions, you can design only one screw and relate everything to a couple of different variable, and then you every time that you want to have different size of the screw, you just change the number for your variable and parameters, and then you get the different type of the screw that you want. For example, here, if we want to have a different depths for our cut and also for our brick, we just easily change the depth from 25 to some other number that we plan to use them. So this is something like for the Lego. Instead of the cut here, you have extrude. So for the Lego, you have different sizes. You create only one brick, and then you use the variable or parameters to create different size of the your Legos. Okay, to start creating or making your parametric design, you need to start creating the like the ordinary part. You just start making your part with some random number for each one of these variable that you can see here. So for example, I start with creating one box and I extrude that. Then I create the hole and cut the hole. For the depths, some random number, and I put those at the center of this hole at the some another random number from the edge, and then I use the pattern to create all of the other holes. Then at the end, when I finish my designing, I come back and I define all of the parameters that I have, and then I go back to my design, and one by one I change all of these dimensions to the parameters that you see in the sketch. Okay, so let's go and start creating our part. So I select the XY, then I go to the essential, I click on the new sketch, and then I start to creating one rectangle. So one thing that you need to notice the difference between the part design for the CATIA and the X drive is that all of these dotted line and also the background that you can see here, they are interactive. So in other words, if I select the rectangle with the center line, so I put the center here, you can see when I move my mouse, it sit down and corner of each one of these cubes. So I can change those one, or I can start writing the dimension here. So I can put the dimension for all of the information for my rectangle from this box that you can see here. So I just create some rectangle here. I click OK. So now I have my rectangle. Then I click on each line, and from the pop-up menu I select the this constraint. So I put this one, for example, as a 80, and I click here and I click on the constraint and put this one as a 140, so that you can see there. Okay, so now I created my base. The other thing that you can notice here, you have more options in your CATIA part design compared to the X drive. So if I click on the rectangle, you have more options to create your rectangle compared to the X design that it was only 2 options. So the CATIA part design is very advanced, and you have more tools to use here. Okay, so after I finish that, I just go and click exit the sketcher or exit the my plane, and then I go and select my extrude. Okay, to do the extrude, I expand my tree and I select my sketch, and for the depth of my extrude, I put for some number like the 50 millimeter. So okay, so now I have the base of my design. So the next thing is that I define one hole, one circle, and cut it through, and then I go to the pattern section. So I come back here, I select my top face, and I click on the creating a new circle or new sketch. Then I select the circle and I put the circle in some dimensions, and I click on the, now I start putting the constraint for, okay, so the 20 millimeter. The next thing is that I select on the constraint again, and now I define the location of my hole or the circle from the edge. So I click on the edge, and then I click on the line that you can see, that's my edge, because I need to click on the constraint, so the 10 millimeter there too. Okay, now I defined my circle, and the next thing is that I just cut it, and this time instead of the 50 I just put the 20 millimeter or 30 millimeter. Okay, so now I have my my cut. One thing here, you can use it and it's different from the X design, is that for the zoom in and zoom out, you just need to click for the wheel, click the wheel, and so to move the part up and down, you just keep the wheel and click the wheel and move the part up and down. And to rotate your part, you click the wheel and keep the control, and then you can rotate your object. And then if you click the wheel down and keep the control down and move the mouse up and down, you can zoom in and zoom out. So to zoom in and zoom out, first you need to click keep the control down, and then click the wheel on your mouse and move in and move out. And if you want to rotate, first you need to click the wheel down and then keep the control to rotate your object. Okay, now let's go and create our pattern and put all of the holes in the different location. So I select my cut, and then I click on the pattern from the essential. So I click on the pattern. Okay, now I put the reference for the first part. I select the top edge, and I have two instant or two holes. So I want to have two holes in this direction, and I put the distance between each one of them as a 40 millimeter. So you can see that this is a second one or second hole that I want to create. And for the second direction, for this direction, I click on the box and I select this line because I want to have a more hole in the top. So I select the 4, and then I put the distance between each one of them as a 40 millimeter. And now you can see that the preview shows that the holes in the other direction, but I can change the direction by clicking to these arrows. So I select the direction and I change the direction. Now you can see that some of the holes, see, it goes out of the my dimension. So I just put the so let me put it as a 3 or make it as a 30. Okay, that's better. Now you have the almost identical part that you want. So this is something you created. So this is the part you just created, and now we go back and define all of the parameters, and the next step is we relate all of these dimensions to the parameters that we define. Okay, so here after we created the part with the random numbers or random dimensions, then we go to the tools and we click on the formula. So it's the fx is a formula that we want to create. So here you can see that for the shape design, for the 3D shape that we have, you can find all of the commands and all of the features that happen for your part here with the value related to them. So for example, here if you expand the first extrude and for your first sketch, so the sketch is defined with the one origin. So you created a rectangle with the one origin and two direction, and then you have your geometry that define all of the 4 point of the 4 location of this rectangle, and then the lines that they connect them. So all of these one they are have a name here, and they are value connected to them. So to create some new parameters and global parameters, you come here and you click first. So the one thing that we need here, we have 1, 2, 3 length parameters. So all of them are the millimeter. So when we define the parameters as a length, you relate the number with the millimeter or inch. And then there's another number that is only the real number. So there's no unit related to this number. This is only the real number, the number 8. And then we define one string that is define the name of the file. So we start with the string. If you want to define, just put the name. For example, here 3D shape. If you want to change the 3D shape to any other name, for example part 1, you need to use the string. So I click on selecting the string, and I click on the new parameters, and here for the new parameters I put the for example the brick, and for the value I put 1. So the brick is the name of the one of the parameters that we are created. So the next thing is that we go to the length and we define the 3 different length parameter that we have here. So one of them is the A50, B25, and 15. So I select the edit, I change the name to A, and I put the value as a 50, and the software, and I click apply, and then you can see the software automatically put the millimeter in front of the the name as a value. So I click on another new parameter and change the name to the B, and I put the number as a 25, click apply, another length, and I put C, and click tab and put this number as a 15. And the last one is just the number that represent the total number of the holes in your brick. So I put the real, and I put the real as a type of the variable, and I click the new parameter, and I change the name of the new parameter to hole, and I put the value as a 8. So 8 is related to my hole now. So I click OK. Okay, now we define all of these variable that we need to use, and we like to have them connected to our dimensions. So the next thing is that I just go back step by step and I change all of the dimensions that I have to the equation, and for the equation I put the different parameters that I have. So for the first rectangle that I created, I have a multiplied by 4 by a multiplied by 2, and then the first extrude is b. So here I click on the sketch, double click on the sketch, so okay, it goes inside the object. Then I click on the these dimensions, and then from the options that I have here, I select the formula. Then from the this drop down menu, I select the rename parameters. So I select the parameters that I define. Then I double click on the A. So I select A and I double click. Then I put the multiply, and then I put 2. Then I click OK. Now you can see that it changed the number to 100, and also you see that there is a FAX beside this number. It means that it is equation. So I click on this 140, then I go to the equation and I click on the random rename the parameters. Again I click on the A and I double click and I multiply by 4. Okay, now I have, okay, now I change the dimension of my brick. The next thing is that the amount of the extrude. To change the amount of the extrude and make it the relation between the extrude and your equation, you just come to this box in front of the lens and you right click, and the first option gives to you to edit formula, and you click on that and do the same. You click on the rename parameters, and then you just click on the B and you click OK. So you can see that it's automatically changed the number to the parameters that we defined, and also you can see that it's not active anymore, and there's a sign of the equation in front of this. So if you want to change this number, or you want to change another parameters to this number, you need to click on the this FX sign. Okay. So we have a B as a depth. Now we go back and we edit the location and the size of the hole that we have and put it as a C, and then we change the amount of the extrude or the extrude cut as a half of the thickness, and at the last step we define and edit our pattern. Okay, so the first step is that we go and expand our extrude cut, and we double click on the sketch 2 because we want to edit the information for the first hole. So I click on this dimension, I click on the formula, then rename, and then I double click on the C and do the same for this one. And the last one, I click on the dimension of the hole. I click on the FX parameters, and then here you can see that this circle defined by radius. So if I want to create the equation, I need to make sure that I divide it by 2, because at the C that we see, we have here the size of the hole that you can see here is the diameter, but here the software has the radius, so I divide it by 2 to get the correct. So now you can see that D is the 15, so diameter is the 15. Okay, now I go out of the exit the app or exit the sketcher. Okay, now I define the location of my hole. Next thing is that I need to edit the amount of my cut, so I right click on the box in front of the lens. I select the formula, select the parameters, and this time the depth should be half of the, so I divide it by 2 to get the half of the depth that I want. So I click OK. Okay, now if you go back here, I edit the base. I edit the location of the C or hole, and now I edit the depth of the hole as a half of the thickness. And for the last step, I edit my pattern. So the distance between each center of the two holes are as same and equal to my A. So I come back here and then I double click my pattern. Okay, now here the first step is that I need to relate the number of the holes to the parameters that I have as a whole. So my parameter is the 8, and I have 2 holes in this direction and 4 holes in the other one. So in this direction, my equation is that hole divided by 4, and in this direction the equation is hole divided by 2. So I come back on the software, I right click on the instance, go to the formula, I select my parameters, and I double click on the hole and I divide it by 4, because in this direction I have only 2. So the next thing is that this spacing, so this spacing should be equal to A. So I click on the parameters and I double click on the A and I click OK. So now I define one set of my pattern. I go to the second direction, do it the same. So for the instance, I select my parameters, hole divided by 2, because I want to have 4 hole and the line side. Then for the spacing, again I select the equation, go to the rename, and I select my A as a equation. Okay, now if I click OK, you can see that I get my final design and all of my parts and everything is related to equation that I have. So I related all of the dimensions to the variable that I have here. So now let's say that you save this part for the for yourself, and then you can edit this one and have a new part. So let me save this file. So I save it and it's saved in my 3D space. So you have some options for the save, so you can save in your local system, but it doesn't let me to save in my computer. So I save, export the file, and for the export I can define the location for the saving the file in my computer. So here I change the type to the CATIA file, So this is the CATIA file. This is the, if you have a software, or for example, if you have a CATIA in your computer, you can save it. I just show you how you can save the file, and it automatically saves the file in the some directory here. So I do not have access to change the location of the file. When I change the type of the file that I want to save, so let's save it for a, so I don't have the required file to save this as a CATIA, because I don't have a CATIA in my computer. So give me some error. I need to save it as a, so I need to save the extension. I keep it as a let's say the what is called the this is the default section, so I select that one and I save it in my download folder. I take all of the configuration and I save them in my computer. Now okay, let me see. So I save it in my computer. Okay. Take off the compatibility mode and configuration. See. Okay, so now it's saved. Now let's say that you want to change the size or the number of the hole in your brick. So you just go and click on the FX, and then you go down and select, for example, I select my hole and I change from the 8 to 6, and then let's say that I want to have a bigger, so I just want to change the depth of the brick from the 25 to 40 millimeter. So I select that, I click here, click 40, and click apply. Okay. So I changed the information for my, so let me see that number of the hole is correct. So the hole is 6 and I changed the B to 40 millimeter. Okay. I need to change the, so instead of the number of the holes, so now I need to divide it by 3 because I want to have a 2 in the other direction. So now let's click OK. Now I change the depth of my card, and also I can change the, if you want to change the dimension of your brick, again you just go to your equation, then you can filter instead of going and finding your parameters, just filter to the rename parameters. These are all of the parameters that you change, and I changed the A from the 50 millimeter to 40. Now you can see that you get the new object with the new dimensions. Okay. So the last item, to get a review to see how you can create the parametric designing, first you need to design your object with some random dimension and make sure that you put all of the dimensions for your design, and then you define all of the parameters, and then you come back in a step by step you change all of these dimensions to your parameters that you have. One of the uh, way that you can have the different design is creating the parameters, and then you can create the design table. So for in this design table you define all of the parameters that you want to change, and then you have one Excel file that gives you the options to create the different um, table with the different row with the different parameters, and then you can recall them and change the size of your object according to the your table. So to do that, you just click on the design table, and then you put the name for this one. For example, design table brick, and then you create the design table with the parameters that you have. So you define you have the parameters, and you just want to create the Excel file. So from the filter type, I select all of the parameters, and I select the one by one. So this one goes to each. So these are all of the rows, and the column. These are all of the columns in your new Excel file, and the rows is the different options that you have. So I create the new Excel file. Again, I put the name of the design table as a brick. Then when I click OK, the software opened the Excel file. Okay, so now in the Excel file here, if I click edit table, now it's opened inside the Excel file, and then I can say that okay, so for the second configuration I want to have like the 50 millimeter A, and B like the B 25, then 10, and I want to have 8 hold the other one. Then I save it and I close this one. So now you can see that I have two different configuration, and let me move this one here. So if I click on the second configuration, the software changed the system to my second configuration. So if I open the so if you have the file, you can easily change the different configuration in your part. One problem that here you can see that it doesn't show the configuration in the tree, so there's a problem to have access to the different variable and also different configuration that I created. I think that problem comes from my graphic card, because when I clicked on the new part here, I can search all of the parts that I created, and I created some other parts before. So if I search them, it goes to the blank space and doesn't show anything. But usually when I click on the search, it goes to my space and all of the shared files that is connected to me, and then I can select them here and open them. But unfortunately, there's some error with my system and my graphic card, so this feature doesn't show. So that's another problem that I have. I don't have the access to the variable and also parts here. So if you want to change the part, or you want to change the for example the if you want to change your the system, for example for here for the number 2 I have the different value, but if I click here on the Excel file and I click on the number 1, it goes to the, if I click apply, you see that you can find all of the dimensions related to my first configuration. So to change the configuration, you can click on the formula, and here you see that you have options here. You click on this Excel shape, and then you can change the configuration, and the software automatically change it for you. So you can go back to your Excel file outside of your program, and then you can edit and add more options, and then you can recall them here and change them for your part. So if I go back to my space here, so this is so here on the MySpace, these are all of the Excel file that I created. And so let me see, so this is the last one. So if you open this file in the Excel file, then you can edit, you can add the different rows, and then you can recall them in your parts. So here is only for the preview, and let me see, can I export it to okay, so I can create another table, and I can add more column, and then the only thing is that you come back on your equation, and then when you select the name of your variable, the first one that I did relate them to the different configuration, then you can recall them. Then you just double click and click OK. So in this way you have your table of the parameters.